All right, we'll get started. Welcome, and here comes the sun indeed. I'm Amy O'Leary, the Executive Director at Strategies for Children. We are recording this call, so you should have given permission as you entered. And we'd love to know who is in the Zoom room today. So if you could add your name and organization to the chat. And I'm also going to have our team introduce themselves. So we will start with Titus.
Good morning, everyone. Titus Dastromedius, Deputy Director here at Strategies for Children.
And then Marge, Neri, Cherry, and Marissa.
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Marge. I'm the Director of Finance and Operations. Welcome.
Morning, everyone. My name is Yagneris Garcia. I am the Director of Communications for Strategies.
Hi, everyone. My name is Cherry or Grongan. I am an intern and also a student at BU.
And hi, everyone. I'm Marissa Fear. I am the Associate Director of Research and Policy at Strategies.
And then I don't know if Jaylise, Ethan, or Sylvia are on. And we also have to extend our SFC privileges to Jenna. So Jenna, please introduce yourself.
Thanks, Amy. Hi, everyone. Jenna Nguyen, previous intern and project manager at Strategies. Good to see everyone again.
And Jenna was co-brainchild of Marissa for the early childhood agenda. We're so happy that you're with us today. As we think about, we are going to, here's our welcome. So please, if you can join us on camera, we'd love to see you. Mute your microphone when not speaking and use the chat prolifically. We also are going to kind of return to the days of the 1, 2s, and 3s. So if you can rename yourself based on this continuum. 1, I'm a caregiver of a young child. And then also a 1, I interact with young children every day and families, or 2s are occasionally, and 3 is I don't regularly interact with children and families, but I do have a vested interest. And remembering that this was a protocol that we used during the agenda process, and the intention of this technique is not to prioritize one person's voice over another, but rather to ensure that we are creating space for those with lived experience and having different perspectives. So we'll give folks a minute to do that, to rename yourself. So, and also we saw this so effectively during the agenda process as folks were certainly self-regulating about thinking about their own participation and making room for folks. And so now we're going to turn to kind of our get to know where we are question. And I do have to thank Liz Walzak from the Boston Opportunity Agenda for this inspiration. So the question is, in the spring, are you more excited about plant seeds or March Madness bracket seeds? So please put in the chat seeds that you plant or seeds that are in the bracket. And would love to see where folks are. I'm seeing a lot of plant seeds. All right, March Madness. Thank you so much for including, for answering this question. And
I also have to share that I have UConn in the championship game. So if there are any good vibes that friends can send my way, I win my bracket.
Oh. All right, Marissa, Wendy looks like she could use some love too. We also will be channeling our beloved facilitator, Mo Barboza, who could not be with us today, but we certainly send all good vibes and thanks to Mo for all the work that he did with us. And so as you keep things going in the chat, so your name, your organization, rename yourself a 1, 2, or 3, and then seeds that we plant or seeds that we cheer for in the brackets. I will turn things over now to Marge, who will, oh, Marissa, love it. Who will, Marge is gonna go over the agenda for today.
All right, again, welcome everybody. I'm just gonna do a quick review of what our agenda is gonna be for today. And the first one is looking back. Marissa will review the story of the early childhood agenda and will review an overview of all we've accomplished since October of 2022. and the story of the early childhood agenda from any new partners that have joined us today. The next item is the agenda. We'll go through the 10 priorities that partners identified and elevated this fall as the early childhood community's highest priorities for the next 2 years. The next one is event release recap. We're going to hear from our Director of Communications, Neri, who will share an overview of the release event at the State House on January 24th and share our new video. The next item is looking forward. We will have partner updates and opportunities for action. Some of our lead advocates have joined us today and they'll share updates on their coalition's work. And we will share an overview of our plans for the future as well. We're also going to do a group MAC activity. We'll use group MAC again to engage your thoughts and feedback. And then finally, next steps. We'll close the meeting with some next steps. And then now I'm just going to turn it over to Marissa.
Thanks, Marge. So I'm going to do a little bit of review on the early childhood agenda, again, just in case there are any new partners who are in the room today and that are hearing about this initiative for the first time today. So wanting to just level set, and then we will jump into some new things towards the end of this meeting. So the first bit is just what is the early childhood agenda? It is a partnership, a process, and a product. So a partnership, a way for us to connect the early childhood community, as we are all doing today. A process, which we'll speak a little bit more about later, which was helped. Kim Lucas at Northeastern University helped us to develop this process. It's a way to engage this community in consensus building. So this was our sort of group maps voting process that we utilized throughout the fall. And then finally, an actual agenda. So where we have these 10 priorities that we have elevated together that we want to see advanced over the next 2 years. So to talk a little bit about our partners, I'm going to turn it over to Cherry, who's going to share some of the research that she did into who has signed up for the early childhood agenda so far. Cherry.
Thank you, Marissa. And here we're looking at the geographic data collected from the registration forms of people who signed up for and participated in the early childhood agenda. And then first, we would like to express our gratitude to all the participants who have signed up and participated in the agenda and also shared this information with us. So because of that, we know that out of the total of 538 participants, the early childhood agenda represents the majority of the geographic regions in Massachusetts. It's comprising over 90% of the regions. And this is a significant representation. And again, we're grateful for everyone. And among these participants, as you can see, 189 people represent the greater Boston area, which includes several cities such as Somerville, Watertown, Malden, Brookline, Dorchester, and more. And for other parts of Massachusetts, we represent approximately 10 to 12% of each part. For the central Massachusetts includes Templeton, Worcester, Webster, and Southbridge. And for western Massachusetts includes Pittsfield, Springfield, Sunderland, and Amherst, and more actually. And so eastern Massachusetts includes Lawrence, Lowell, Newburyport, and more. And lastly, the southeastern Massachusetts includes Quincy. Oh, this is hard for me to pronounce. Attleboro and Bridgewater. And then next slide, please, Marissa. And for these data, we're looking at, well, people who, so for basically these are data showing that will include voices from people who directly work with young children and family, people who occasionally interact with them, and people who may not regularly interact with them, but work in policy, system research, or other supporting areas, which are all considered very significant. And also among these, some people say they just like put unknown. So that means they maybe they didn't want to share the information. Yeah, and also 9% are from the caregiver for young children. And that's it. Thank you, everyone. And we'll turn it over to Marissa.
Thanks, Cherry. So we were really glad to have sort of this baseline information here. It gives us a sense of where we are and then also knowing where we want to go. So a couple things that I would point out is just that we were thrilled to see that we have the majority of, or not the majority, the highest percentage that we have from the 1, 2s, and 3s or 1s, which is what we want. We also want to see that number grow. So as we think about inviting new partners to participate in this and some of the engagement that we will outline moving forward, I think that's one area that we definitely want to see this grow. And then with geographic area as well, I think we can all see here that there's an overrepresentation of the greater Boston area. So as we continue to bring on new partners, to think about every corner of Massachusetts and continuing to recruit partners from all over. We also know that the sign-up form is just sort of one metric for participation. We put out a survey in the fall that informed the final agenda product, and then we opened up the group map, the final group map, where we voted on the results to anyone who also participated in that survey. So we know that while we hope our sign-up form has captured a number of our partners, that it probably didn't capture everyone. So the survey, combined with our agenda partners, we saw over 1,000 people participate in the development of this agenda. 65% of those who completed the survey identified as working with children and families every day, which we were thrilled to see. More than half of those that completed the survey said that they have a young child under the age of 8. We saw statewide representation with 50 individuals from each region of Massachusetts. And as you all know, we sort of developed this early childhood agenda over 4 months. There were 8 meetings, and we were able to translate that survey into 7 different languages. On top of that, there were countless discussion board posts, chat comments, ideas, survey responses, and votes. And while we know that this all was consolidated into the 10 priorities that we are ultimately going to talk about today, that all of those ideas are helpful and worthwhile, and that we want to keep track of them and find some way to keep them on our minds throughout the next few years as well, so that if something is to move, that we can sort of shift our focus in that direction and help promote that as well. So to zoom in on the process a little bit, now that we've talked about the partnership, the process is really combined of these 4 different components. The first part is priorities, which is how we spent our fall, was sort of identifying those collective priorities, our 10 priorities of the early childhood agenda. And we began to talk about some of the research questions and data needs that we have through our data team. And now we're really gonna sort of zoom in on those 2 components in action for the next phase of the early childhood agenda project, which we'll share some more about today. And as you all know, the process to get to those priorities really begins with brainstorming always. So we start by brainstorming, hearing from all of you, gathering feedback from our community on what's the largest challenges that are facing children and families today. We narrow that down, but through a combination of sort of sharing these ideas back and forth with each other, grouping them together when possible, and then ultimately voting on the highest priority challenges. We then switched our focus to solutions. So after we had identified what those challenges were, to use that same process to identify solutions. And I'll use Kim's quote from the event release in January, which is that if we cannot identify our challenges first, that gives us an opportunity to think more innovatively and to identify solutions that may not have been available if we sort of had focused on the solutions first. So that was the thinking behind this process and why we always want to start with the challenges before moving to solutions. We also launched 5 different working groups, which was how we bucketed out the work. So we know there was a lot of overlap between these 5 different working groups, that we saw that many of the challenges, many of the solutions that were elevated through those conversations, that there was overlap. So what we did at the end of the process was sort of saw where we could combine these conversations into one priority, or think about sort of the intersections between what might have been elevated as a priority through early childhood workforce, but maybe makes more sense in sort of the system infrastructure piece as an example. And we're going to keep talking about sort of work groups moving forward and how we can build off of the system of these 5 work groups. We also had a number of tools and engagement opportunities. So as an example, we heard from one of our priorities on the 9:30 call this morning. We've had a number of other priorities join us and sort of share their current work and what they give us a background on the issue itself and what they're working on today. We also began hosting 9:30 calls at night throughout the fall, which we hope to continue doing. Basecamp is our collaboration tool, and we will be using that a lot more over the next few months. So we'll share a bit about how we plan to do that later. YouTube, and finally Group Map. So YouTube, where we're posting all of the recordings of these meetings and of the 9:30 calls. Group Map was a sort of the brainstorming tool that we found online that was really helpful, a way to sort of get everyone's feedback in this virtual setting, to bring sticky notes to our computers, essentially. And then to also think about our in-person conversations. So through the Advocacy Network, to rely on our advocates to bring some of these conversations to their local communities and to continue the early childhood agenda work at the local level as well. Through our blog, and then also we are considering a podcast of sorts, sort of bringing out the voices of the early childhood agenda, thinking about how we can tell some really interesting stories about each of these different priority areas and build out that capacity as well. And now finally the product. So this is the early childhood agenda. It's 2 pages. The first page is really more of a background on all the work that we have done over the past few months. And the second page goes into each of the 10 priorities. So you can see for each of the 10 priorities, there is some language describing what that priority is. There are icons for the working groups, and then there is either a lead advocate who has been identified already, or there is an opportunity to lead icon there. So I'll zoom in on the working groups first. What we did here is we wanted to sort of acknowledge where these recommendations came from. So using number 1 as an example, this recommendation really came from the Financially Secure Families Work Group and the Early Childhood Workforce Work Group. Seeing that, you know, the driving investments in workforce compensation really coming from the early childhood workforce, that was one of the highest priorities that was voted on there, and addressing family affordability, access, and many other components that this recommendation hopes to address, coming from the Financially Secure Families Group. There's a few other examples here where we have sort of 2 very different recommendations. So I'll use number 7 as an example there. 7 is really about thinking through our state infrastructure, building integrated state government. And you see that reflected in 2 different ways from 2 different coalitions who are leading that work, and that recommendation really stemmed from 2 different working groups. But there is sort of some cohesiveness between what they're trying to accomplish. So the first one being creating a children's cabinet within the executive office of the governor to promote interdepartmental collaboration. And that's being led by the Child and Adolescent Health Initiative, who we heard from the 9:30 call this morning. Then the second one is establishing a common application for public benefits and ensuring timely and effective implementation, which is being led by the Common Apps Coalition. And we actually saw that bill pass during the last session. So really turns to implementation now at this point. I will spend just a few minutes reading through these just to make sure that everyone knows what the 10 priorities of the early childhood agenda are, or at least I'll summarize to give you all a sense. So number 1 is really about the early education and care system and a comprehensive review of that system. So really focusing in on addressing family affordability, establishing a career pathway, and then identifying the funding mechanisms to drive investments in workforce compensation. The lead advocate for that is the Common Start Coalition, which we know is a coalition that has been meeting for a number of years now, has an advocacy agenda, has developed recommendations, and can focus their efforts on sort of implementing that over the next few months. The second recommendation really wants to think about the early childhood community more broadly. So beyond early educators and sort of the early education and care space, how do we ensure that all professionals who are working in early childhood have access to competitive wages and an affordable benefits package, and thinking about the variety of benefits that fall under that. And then also the variety of mechanisms or pathways forward to ensure that that's what we have in Massachusetts. So we saw a number of different ideas elevated through this process, and look forward to that recommendation sort of developing some more concise recommendations over the next few months, which we'll share more about how we plan to do that later on. The third recommendation, or the third priority, is to provide a guaranteed minimum income and ensure we have an adequate safety net in Massachusetts. And doing this through a couple of different mechanisms. The first is through 2 tax credits, the Earned Income Tax Credit and the Child and Family Tax Credit. We'll hear from the Healthy Families Tax Credit Coalition later on. And to raise cash assistance grants, which we'll hear from the Lift Our Kids Coalition as well on that one.
Marissa, we've gotten a couple of requests to zoom in on this page. If you're
I
in
know
PowerPoint,
it is very small. A little
if you're
hard
in PowerPoint,
to zoom.
maybe you can just zoom in on the presentation mode, but if not, we've put the links in the chat as well so people can find this document and follow along.
Yeah, it's a little hard to zoom on PowerPoint now in the sharing moment, but if we put the links in the chat, that should be good too, that people have sort of access to it on their own computers as well. I know it is very small. For number 4, we're really looking at developmental monitoring, screening, evaluation, and providing services to young children. And we have a number of advocates who are working in that space. The United Way has done a lot of work in that space. The CDC's Massachusetts Act Early Ambassador, as well as the Massachusetts Early Intervention Consortium is leading a lot of work over there. Number 5 is really about developing a comprehensive quality infrastructure in Massachusetts. And there's a number of different initiatives that are either currently happening or that there was interest in sort of pushing that work forward and thinking about how do we create something that is linked together, that is comprehensive and that is clear so that those who are working with young children have the quality supports that they need to be able to deliver quality services. Number 6 came from Titus's work group, actually. So number 6 is really about conducting a landscape analysis of existing local coordination efforts, family councils, and regional navigation hubs or family support centers in Massachusetts and other state models, to use that and consider best practices around local partnerships and local governance, local infrastructure. So thinking about the goals, the funding, the staffing, the coordination needed for early childhood at the local level. We talked through number 7 already, which is sort of integrated state government. Number 8 is really about a public education campaign. So how do we raise awareness and establish a community-wide recognition on the importance of high quality early childhood experiences for young children's optimal growth and development. Number 9 is about strengthening those links between medical professionals and other early childhood programs and services. So expanding access to early childhood developmental specialists and navigators in primary care settings was one example of that, as well as developing a vision for childcare health consultants in early education and care programs was another example that was elevated. And then finally, number 10, which is sort of 2-pronged, ensuring that all students have access to free school meals through the Feed Kids Now Coalition's initiative, and then also really zooming in on the early childhood space and identifying a comprehensive solution to address early childhood hunger, starting at birth and considering a variety of different mechanisms for that pathway. All right, and now I'm going to turn it over to Neri, who will share a little bit about our event, a release event in January, and a new video that we have.
Good morning. I'm going to switch over. I'm also recording, and I'm going to switch over to gallery view because I can't see myself while I'm talking. Okay, so for the release event on January 24th, we wanted to ensure that folks that were participating online across the state would also be able to tune in. So for that, we actually hired TCGT Entertainment to help us do that, to help us with the mechanism of live stream. And so some of you may have already seen the video live on that day, and it's also posted on YouTube. So if you want to go back and just check it out to see how it went, everything is there. We also had a photographer come in and take some really great pictures. And then finally, we wanted to be able to document this process and also be able to promote this process and what the next steps are. So with all that said, I am going to share my screen to show you the final product. Just want to double check. Was everyone able to hear that? No. Okay, hold on a second. Share sound.
This is quite a feat of recording the Zoom and playing a video on this meeting.
All right, so I think I shared the sound. It starts very quickly when I'm playing from my computer. So and it's also posted. It's also posted on YouTube. So I'll put the link on YouTube. In the chat.
Good morning, good people. Welcome to today's meeting of the Early Childhood Agenda.
The Early Childhood Agenda was designed to create Nary, that not only engages, but
you can't see it.
We see like the window of, we see like a teeny tiny video, but we can't hear it is the right news.
Let's see, plan B.
Do you want me to try to show it?
I think I'm going to switch to
Zoom.
YouTube.
Okay, yeah, switch to YouTube.
Yeah, I'll switch. We were trying to not go through YouTube branding stuff.
Right.
By
so if you hear the ad, forgive us. As folks were joining, we also renamed ourselves using 1s, 2s, and 3s, our protocol that we used during the agenda. And we also just put our name and organization. So if folks haven't had a chance to do that, it's great to know who's in the room.
And while the video is being loaded, a special thank you to everyone who came to the State House on January 24th. I was at home sick, so I feel still to this day very sad that I could not be there. But extra encouraged and actually proud of the folks who were able to be interviewed for this video you're about to see, including I see Brian Gold. We had 3 or 4 people from our advocacy network, Wairimu, Mihan, Hung, and I know Yolanda is here, and who was one of the speakers, along with Shannon. So many people made that event special, and you will hear their excerpts from their interviews in a moment.
Okay, I think I'm ready.
That's what they call the SFC stall.
Yes, thank you.
Good morning, good people. Welcome to today's meeting of the Early Childhood Agenda.
The Early Childhood Agenda was designed to create and hold space that not only engages, but builds shared power with the early childhood community, because they are closest to the work and best positioned to identify priorities that will lead to meaningful and sustained change. The Early Childhood Agenda was informed by over 1,000 people and imagines, prioritizes, and builds collective action around equitable and impact-driven solutions by implementing policy change into practice that supports healthy beginnings, high-quality experiences for young children, financially secure families, robust system infrastructure and partnerships at the state and local level so that all young children, families, the early childhood workforce, and the economy may thrive. This convening relies on long-standing partnerships and seeks to build new relationships through a process designed to support cross-sector collaboration and push for interwoven and aligned early childhood policy. We are not community organizers, but organizers of community.
I'm here today to support the Early Childhood Agenda because this work is so important. All of the things that the Early Childhood Agenda are doing, I believe in. I've been working with early childhood professionals for over 20 years, and it's really all about high quality care, access to care, making sure that our families are financially stable, they can afford care so that they can work.
Before coming to work in the early education field, I used to be a stay-at-home mother, And I also have a challenge to seek the childcare for my children so that I can return to work at my full capacity. Every day I'll take a step to be at the front line to advocate and support the working mothers who have the same challenges just like me so that they can have the affordable high-quality childcare to support their family as a whole.
It excites me the way the community has come together across Massachusetts of all backgrounds, all across the state, those from grass tops to grassroots, from parents, providers, policymakers, educators, researchers, really coming to all to give voice to children. We think of children as not always having their own voice and needing voices and supports to have them, to help them. They have their own voices and we're here to help amplify and support them. This opportunity, which has been built on the backs of the work that Strategies for Children has been doing for decades, and is really galvanized with the 930 call and through the COVID pandemic to really bring that community together and call in more people across the state, those who have been doing the work for years and those who are new to it, to really help support and drive young children.
I am here today because I am part of the Advocacy Network. It is a big part of social work. It's one of our founding values, and the fact that I have seen through my work experience the strength and resiliency as well as the creativity of the families and children that I serve, that I just hope to be able to bring their perspectives to the table so that their voices can be part of the solution, right?
I think with the early childhood agenda, what's wonderful is that we all want the same thing. We all are aiming to the well-being of all children in our community, and we want Massachusetts to do more for them.
It excites me to be here today because this is just a platform for people's voices to be heard. People, trying to make children's lives better, and we always talk about being on the table. This is exactly it. And I can't just wait to see what this brings together and brings forth.
The Early Childhood Agenda takes a whole child approach, working across sectors to bring communities together to identify needs and co-construct solutions that may not be visible from one sector's viewpoint, with the goal of driving policy change for children and families in Massachusetts. It is a partnership, it is a process, and it is a product that elevates the immediate priorities of the field. Together, we can build a roadmap to ensure that Massachusetts has an integrated and accessible system of support for children prenatal through age 8 and their families.
And that was it. Oh. Sorry.
All right, thanks, Mary. So now we're going to get into the new stuff, which is really looking forward and what happens next with the Early Childhood Agenda. Our team has been meeting with a number of our various partners over the past few weeks and sort of beginning to develop what this next phase will look like. So thank you to the many partners on this call today that have taken those meetings and that we've talked through and sort of brainstormed what this could turn into, what this could be. We really see sort of two paths moving forward. One is to think about raising awareness and connecting all of our various partners with the existing coalitions that the Early Childhood Agenda priorities sort of call out. So for that, on this list here is the Healthy Families Tax Credit Coalition, the Common Start Coalition, the Common Apps Coalition, Massachusetts Child and Adolescent Health Initiative, the Lift Our Kids Coalition, and the Feed Kids Now Solve Hunger Coalition. So the second pathway there is what we'll really get into today, where we want to utilize the structure, the infrastructure of the Early Childhood Agenda to really think about how we can advance those 7 priorities that don't necessarily have a coalition pushing the work forward already, and how we can support that moving forward. So to start off here, we wanted to give all of our partners an opportunity to share a little bit about their work, introduce themselves, and make the connections and sort of put a name to a face for the work that we called out on the early childhood agenda. So we'll hear from 4 partners, and then our team will share a few updates from the partners that couldn't be here with us today. So we'll start with Naomi Meyer from the Lift Our Kids Coalition. We'll move over to Charlotte Bruce from the Healthy Families Tax Credit Coalition, Ryan Tellengater from the Common Start Coalition, and Kate Barlow, who works for Massachusetts Act Early. So I will start by turning it over to Naomi and turning off screen share so we can see everyone's faces.
Hi, thank you. It's really nice to be here. I know many of you, but probably there's lots of folks I don't know yet. So, so the Lift Our Kids Coalition is seeking to raise cash assistance grants for very low income families. This is the TAFDC program administered by the Department of Transitional Assistance. And to give you just a quick overview of what the campaign's about, I have a couple of slides. So do I have screen share permission, Marissa? Yes, okay.
Yeah, you should be good to go.
Let me know if this works. Can you see my slides?
Yeah, looks good.
Okay. So the problem that we're trying to address is that our cash assistance programs in Massachusetts, both cash assistance for families and the separate EADC program that provides a very small amount of subsistence cash to elders and individuals with disabilities, both of them had frozen grants for a very long time, meaning they were not adjusted for inflation. In contrast to federal programs like SSI or SNAP, food stamps, I mean, none of them are very much or enough, but those programs are adjusted each year for inflation, and our cash programs were not. And so as a result, they just lost value for literally decades. As you can see here, there was one very small increase to TAFDC in 2000, but nothing before or after until this campaign got underway, and no increase at all in EADC. So that was the problem that left people, this is supposed to be our safety net, but folks who were receiving those benefits, really weren't and still are not getting enough to even meet the bare necessities. So to give you an idea of the numbers for cash assistance for families, TAFDC, for 20 years, the maximum grant that a family of 3 could get was $593 a month. We launched this campaign to lift kids out of deep poverty in 2019, and we've achieved 3 incremental grant increases since then, shown here on this graph. So each of these were 10% or a little bit less than 10% over the course of the last 3 state budgets. With the most recent increase being in October, grants were increased to $783 a month for a family of 3. So very significant increase over what they were before, but of course, still not enough, to make up for 35 years of lost value. And especially with the recent really skyrocketing inflation, we know that the most recent grants kind of got eaten up immediately, eroded by inflation. The goal, so actually, let me just to summarize that though, the success and the reason we're optimistic is because this was a total of 32% increase to cash assistance since January 2021, and the impact is enormous. These are the lowest income folks in our communities, 39,000 families with children, and another 29,500 elders and persons with disabilities benefiting from these increases. So our goal is to get grants up to the very modest goal of half the federal poverty level. So we're not even talking about getting people out of poverty. We're just trying to make sure that they have the basic minimum to be able to survive in Massachusetts, in our high cost state, and raise healthy kids. And so our goal is to get grants up to half the federal poverty level, which is also referred to as deep poverty. So you can see here for a family of 3, currently the poverty level would be $2,072 a month. So half that, our very modest goal, is $1,036 a month, the blue bar, and the red bar is where we are currently, even with the 3 grant increases we've achieved. So we still have work to do. Just another way to think about the problem is that if grants, as they were back in 1988, had just kept up with inflation and nothing else, they would now be $1,350 a month. So you can see just here starkly laid out for you the lost value to inflation. So income, Rep. Decker and Senator DiDomenico, who've been our champions from the beginning in the legislature on this, they file bills each session. This session, they are House Bill 144 and Senate Bill 75. And they call for grants to be increased by 25% each year until they reach that goal of half the federal poverty level. For TFDC, would only take 2 more years to get there. And then the bills would also build in a cost of living adjustment thereafter, so we don't run into the same problem of losing value to inflation and have to start all over in the future. So I will stop my screen share. I will put in, oh, thank you, Marissa. I was about to say I will put our website in. You already did that. So in addition to the bills, we have a budget campaign sort of as a companion to that, because when you need new money to be allocated, you always need to pursue that through the budget. And in fact, the last 3 years budgets, state budgets, are where we did get the increases, the incremental increases that we've achieved so far. So in addition to seeking co-sponsors on the bill, we are asking all of our supporters in the legislature to include the 25% grant increase and the bill provisions basically in their budget requests to the Ways and Means Committee for this budget, the FY24 budget that's coming up as well. So ways that you all can help if you're, well, several. If your organization is not yet a member of Lift Our Kids and you would like to join, we would be delighted to have you. You can sign up to get on our email list on the website that Marissa put there. I'm also just going to put my email if you have questions or want to know what it means to be a supporting organization or anything. I welcome your reaching out to me directly. The other thing that you can do is we have an online action through a platform called Voter Voice that allows you to enter your address and send a quick email to your legislators. I will post the link for that in the chat as well for anybody who wants to just go ahead and do that and make sure their legislators know, you know, that that you are hoping they'll co-sponsor the bill. We have already got almost 100 co-sponsors, which is a great number. It is not as many as we had last session though, so I am sure we can get more. One of the things that slowed us and everyone down a little bit was that this session, there's no deadline. There's typically in the past, there's been a deadline for House co-sponsors. There wasn't a deadline. There's not a deadline until the bill's heard in committee, which is probably going to take months. And since legislators have 7,000 bills to go through, understandably, not all of them have gone through all the bills and done all their co-sponsoring yet. But if you can let your legislators know, well, hey, this one's a priority, that is super helpful. So unless there's questions, I will stop there.
Thank you, Naomi. And if there are questions, feel free to put them in the chat. I know Naomi said she shared her email there and the website as well, so we can look forward to seeing some connections there in the chat as well. And with that, I will turn it over to Charlotte, who's going to share a little bit about the Healthy Families Tax Credit Coalition.
Great, thanks, Marissa. Hi, everybody. I'm Charlotte, and I am with Children's Health Watch at Boston Medical Center, and we lead the Healthy Families Tax Credits Coalition. And taking a cue from Naomi, I'm also going to share a short slide deck that we have. Bear with me. Okay, so our coalition, so we started back in 2015, focused on the earned income tax credit, but as you'll hear today, and as you are probably familiar, we now focus on a child and family tax credit as well. So our coalition, which has a bunch of different groups across the state, including childcare folks, including Strategies for Children, and members of this group, as well as Head Start Association and others are part of our network. But essentially, we are working on the earned income tax credit and child and family tax credit expansions, focusing on refundable tax credits because the structure of refundable tax credits are that if what you owe in taxes, or if your credits are larger than what you owe, you get those back as a refund. So for families with low tax liability or no tax liability, so primarily families with low incomes or moderate incomes, that's really just money back into their pocket. And because this is administered through the tax system, it does not count as income towards other public benefit programs. So it's really a way to just get money back into people's pockets without it affecting other programs and eligibility. And because of with both these credits, so the earned income tax credit is a targeted program. So this is for families with low and moderate incomes, and depending on your family size, it goes up to families who make roughly $60,000. So that's, of course, an amount that's in Massachusetts not a lot, but compared to eligibility for childcare subsidies and other programs, it's a population that is oftentimes ineligible for those programs. So this is another way to reach families who are kind of in this transition period or in this kind of, block that we know is not financially stable, but is also not eligible for a lot of assistance. And so there's a federal earned income tax credit, and currently there's a state state earned income tax credit, that piggybacks on that, offering a 30% credit of your federal amount. And so what that looks like, this is a graph, the pink being what is the current state EITC, and the blue is one of our priorities, is what we're hoping to move it to. This is, as I mentioned, the credits are different by family size, how many children you have, if you're single, married, but these at the bottom are the average credits per family size. So as you can see, it's a pretty significant amount of money that families can get back, and we are hoping to make it even larger. So this blue bar would be 50% of the federal credit. This pink bar is 30%. And those have been our long time, that's been our long time goal since 2015, when the ITC was originally 15%, but we've had some wins since then. Our two other priorities around the earned income tax credit are expanding eligibility to immigrants who file with an individual tax identification number, who are currently excluded from the federal and state credit despite working and paying taxes. And then the third is to remove the large family penalties. So right now you can only claim the credit, as this graph shows, for up to 3 children. And then after that, even if you have 4 children, 5 children, you still get the same amount of credit. And so we'd like to eliminate that, so families that are larger receive a credit that reflects that. Our second priority, and I think this is really where it's helpful to have a visual because it can get a little bit complex, but so the child and family tax credit, which you may have heard about recently with the governor's proposal, but currently there are 2 existing dependent credits, the household dependent tax credit and the dependent care tax credit. The dependent care tax credit, you can receive up to 25% more for each dependent, and it's for qualified care expenses. So families who don't have qualified care expenses, use informal childcare, for example, they don't receive as much as a benefit. And there's also slightly different eligibility in terms of the age of children that are eligible. One thing that is really great about the credit in their current law or current structure is that they're universal. So it's available to families with no earned income, whereas that previous credit I was just describing, you do need to have at least $1 of earned income. And there's no income cap. So it's a universal credit. And then the second piece is that it's immigrant inclusive. So in the FY21 budget, it also became eligible to I-10 filers. So again, a group that is ineligible for the credit I was just describing. And so right now, what our coalition is proposing and what the governor has also proposed is to combine and streamline these into a single child and family tax credit of $600 per dependent. We like to say at least $600. Hers is a $600 proposal. And this is inclusive of disabled dependents, adult dependents, and seniors. We would like to see this available for all children, so including older children under the age of 18. The governor's proposal is to have this available to children who are under the age of 13. And then the last part is making sure that it is indexed to inflation. So not just 600 this year, next year, the following year, but as inflation grows or cost of living is adjusted, we'd like to see this, this tax credit adjusted as well. And just because I love visuals, this is a picture of what the current dependent credits look like, are the pink and the blue, and then the green is what a $600 child and family tax credit would look like. And these are currently capped at 2 children. And so we would like to see, again, that lifted so that families can receive this benefit no matter how many dependents they have. And then in terms of opportunities, so similarly, we have a few bills that these priorities are contained in. One is from Senator Eldridge, which strategically has both of the credits combined into one bill. And then our other champs, Rep. Decker, Rep. Vargas, and Senator DiDomenico have split the 2 tax credits into 2 different packages as a different strategy. But the vehicle that we really see as the opportunity is either the budget, which our wins on the earned income tax credit from previous years have been through, as well as a tax package that is moving this year. So as I've been talking about, the governor at the beginning of the month, alongside her budget proposal, had a large tax proposal that's a little bit under $1 billion. I think it's about $750 million, but the largest piece of that is this child and family tax credit. And so we actually had a hearing, Revenue Committee had a hearing yesterday that Amy was able to join and testify at, which we were so grateful for. The committee was really interested. I think what we heard from the questions is that they're really interested in the connection between these credits and childcare, both how it supports families in affording childcare, but also how it supports childcare workers. And I think that's where this piece around the earned income tax credit really comes in. While one of our goals and the agenda's goals is to increase pay for childcare workers, this is another opportunity in the meantime to support current pay for low-wage workers. So I know that's a lot of information, but that is a nutshell what's going on. So the Revenue Committee heard the governor's tax proposal yesterday. We've been hearing that the House will likely come out with a tax package in the next couple of weeks, which they will then will also go to Revenue, and these things will kind of be rolled into one another. And tomorrow, and this is a great week to be having this call, because tomorrow the coalition's having an event at the State House, which I'll drop information in the chat about that. It's at 10 to 11 o'clock, and the State House in Senate Room 428. We're gonna be presenting about the proposals, having a big coalition launch and rally day, and afterwards kind of fanning out across the State House as I'm sure many of you have been doing over the past few weeks, to get senators and reps to sign on to the bills and talk about these tax credits. So if you're able to join us, we'd love to have you there. We also are always looking to grow our coalition, whether you just want to be on our listserv and get these action alerts and updates of what's going on, or if you're able to participate in any greater of a capacity. We have a sign-up sheet that I will also drop in the chat. Thank you.
Thank you, Charlotte. And again, if there are any questions, please post them in the chat, and I know Charlotte will put some contact information and website in the chat as well. And with that, I will turn it over to Ryan, who's going to share an update on the Common Start Coalition.
Awesome. Thanks, Marissa. Hey, everybody. Ryan Tellengater. I work at Jumpstart and represent Jumpstart on the steering committee of the Common Start Coalition. I unfortunately do not have pretty visuals and slides, but I love talking about the coalition and the work we do. So happy to answer any questions offline. Yeah, if anyone has any follow-up. So the Common Start Coalition is a statewide partnership of organizations, providers, parents, early educators, and advocates working together to make high quality early education and childcare affordable and accessible to all Massachusetts families. The coalition also wants to make sure that early educators are paid fair wages, programs are supported, and really just holistically wants to pass comprehensive legislation that would support the field. So last session, we had a bill filed in the House and the Senate. It went to the Education Committee. It was reported out of the committee. It was passed by the Senate, but unfortunately it didn't gain the necessary traction to make it out of the House. So this session, we have filed 2 bills again under the leadership of Representatives Modero and Gordon and Chair Jason Lewis and Senator Sue Moran. And we are hopeful that there will be some good progress. For a quick update on kind of where the bill is right now, last week we had a great legislative briefing at the State House and a lobby day. We see that there are a lot of co-sponsors on the bill. It's H489 and Senate 301. Those are the bill numbers. We have over 80 co-sponsors in the House and over 20 in the Senate. Feels like there's a lot of good momentum. We saw in the governor's budget that there's a lot of money supporting the field. The coalition is currently pulling together our budget ask, but there are a lot of opportunities to get involved. In addition to kind of reaching out to your representatives, you can join the coalition. I will supplement all this information with links in the chat. And there are also a couple of roundtables, virtual roundtables, where we're hearing from different constituencies. So parents are at the parent roundtable is actually tonight, but there's an early educators one. And so on. And those will be happening over the next 2 weeks to kind of continue to make the issue front and center and to raise awareness for legislators who want to attend. There are a lot of legislative advocacy opportunities, budget advocacy opportunities, and we feel like there's, as people have said, a lot of good momentum and support for making the system better for families, children, educators, and more. So happy to answer any questions. I'll put my contact information in the chat and how to join the coalition. Thank you for the time.
Thanks, Ryan. And finally, I'll turn it over to Kate Barlow, who is the Massachusetts CDC Massachusetts Act Early ambassador. So Kate, I'll turn it over to you.
Great. Thank you so much. Again, I'm Kate Barlow. I am the CDC's ACT Early Ambassador for the state of Massachusetts, and I wanted to announce the Mass ACT Early campaign that I'm co-leading with Carla from the United Way. The event is the first ever statewide developmental monitoring and screening week, April 12th through the 19th. I put the website up, but as of today, we had 20 sites registered. We don't have them all yet up on the website. But please go ahead and check us out. We're really excited to just really raise awareness for the importance of developmental monitoring and screening, and having different sites across the state really focusing in on children and the importance of combining developmental monitoring with screening for child outcomes. I will just share our quick flyer, which will be in the early 9:30 call folder. If you are wanting more information, I'll put my email in the chat. But again, it's April 12th through the 19th, and we're really looking for sites across the United States, across Massachusetts, to host an event. And it could be something like you already have a parent meeting and you're going to complete developmental monitoring checklists with those families at the meeting. So there are developmental milestone moment booklets available for every child, and a CDC free book for every child that completes a developmental monitoring checklist. Once you register for the site, register for the event, you will have access to these books and booklets, as well as a online social media toolkit to advertise your event, and Mass Act Early will help advertise your event as well. So thank you. I hope that if you haven't already signed up, that you will.
Thanks, Kate. All right, to round out this part of the discussion, we had 3 other existing coalitions who were not able to be with us today: the Common Apps Coalition, Massachusetts Child and Adolescent Health Initiatives, and the Feed Kids Now. So I'm just going to give some quick updates on some of the work that they all have been doing, and we'll be sure to post any relevant information in the chat as well, so that you have that there. But to start with the Common Apps Coalition. So as many of you know, we saw legislation pass last session for a common application in Massachusetts that would provide sort of a common application for SNAP, cash assistance, WIC, healthcare, fuel assistance, childcare, and housing. So now the focus really turns to implementation, and with the change in a new administration, understandably, there's sort of a little bit of a lag period here where we need the new administration to sort of get up to speed on all the work that has been done up until this point and figure out what the next steps are. So that coalition is currently on a bit of a pause, reassessing and preparing for the implementation advocacy that is likely to come in the future. The Child and Adolescent Health Initiative spoke on the 9:30 call this morning, actually. So that posting or that recording will be on our website in the near future, and you can watch it there to get a much more comprehensive overview of all the work that they are doing. But they are seeking to create a children's cabinet within in Massachusetts within state government. And there was a legislative briefing on Monday, and they filed 2 bills that would create this children's cabinet. So we'll go ahead and post all of that into the chat as well. And then finally, there is the Feed Kids Now Coalition, where there's been a lot of action. So there was a supplemental budget for fiscal year 2023 that was needed to sort of secure the remainder of the funding needed for this current school year to ensure that all children have access to free school meals, as well as a budget campaign for the next school year as well. So to continue this, this Universal School Meals for All campaign through the budget. There's also bill advocacy, and we heard that there was a educator panel last week where it was a chance for the legislators to hear from educators and education professionals about how critical the school meals has been to the children in their schools. So a lot of exciting information happening there as well. We'll put their emails, or we'll put their websites and emails in the chat, just so that if there are any questions, or if you want to make some connections with those remaining coalitions, that you can hear some updates directly from them. And with that, I'm going to turn it to all of the new sort of the focus of this meeting, which is the next steps for the early childhood agenda. And I did put something in the chat a minute ago talking through sort of how these updates are reflected in the priorities, and that we really saw the partner updates cover priorities number 1, number 3, number 4, number 7, and number 10. Our next set of updates are going to cover the remaining priorities, and we're going to dive a little bit deeper on number 4, where we heard from Kate, who was sharing about the campaign that Mass Act Early and the United Way are hosting, as well as number 10, which is the Feed Kids Now Coalition, is doing a lot of work around universal school meals. But as we mentioned, we also want to focus on early childhood hunger as well. So I'm going to dive into that, and then we're going to jump into the group map activity, and really want to give a brief overview and then hear from you all about questions, comments, opportunity for feedback. All right. So to begin with the timeline, so Strategies for Children began a strategic planning process, which concluded in August of 2021, which really tasked us with thinking through how we could support an early childhood agenda in Massachusetts. So from August of 2021 through October of 2022, we met with key advisors, partners in the early childhood space, and created a structure for the early childhood agenda. From October of 2022 through January of 2023 was really this development phase for the agenda itself, which many of you participated in. So our work groups identified, coordinated, and elevated key priorities, then reviewed and analyzed feedback from partners to develop a consolidated early childhood agenda through this consensus building process. And now we're moving into the sort of uncharted territory, the implementation phase, which is going to be from January of 2023 through January of 2025. As many of you may remember, when we launched this, we wanted it to be time-bound, to identify 10 priorities that we could make progress on within the next 2 years. So some of those, that progress is going to mean passing bills or advancing budget campaigns, advocacy and implementation. And for others, it's going to mean developing what those actual recommendations are that we want to see advanced in the future. So in an effort to build collective action around these 10 priorities, we're going to engage and support our partners and the communities to participate in actionable initiatives, which I'll share some more about today. And then the future. So thinking about what this can be beyond January of 2025 feels pretty far off at this point, but it's an opportunity for us to reflect on the past 2 years, to think about what worked, what didn't work, what we would want to change, establish a roadmap for early childhood in Massachusetts that will change policy, systems, and bring our vision to a reality. So thinking a lot more long-term and holistically about what this can turn into beyond January of 2025. So to start with our proposed structure and what we're thinking about moving forward, and to preface this, all of this is a draft. So we really do want to hear feedback from you all. We want to have sort of your thoughts inform the next steps of this process. So once we get into the group map, please don't be shy and give us all the constructive feedback you can think of. So to start off, we're thinking of quarterly meetings of this early childhood agenda group. So the next meeting would be in June of 2023 as an example. In between those quarterly meetings, we would see meetings of a stewardship team, which is really going to sort of be the decision-making body of the early childhood agenda, so that doesn't lie solely within Strategies for Children. Communications and data-specific teams that are going to focus on those components of our work, and then the work group meetings, which I'll share some more about in a minute. So that would all happen in between these quarterly meetings. In terms of timeline, the way I'm going to phrase this is that we have checkpoints and we have goals. So what we would like to see is that each of these work groups will sort of operate independently, which means that the timeline will change pretty dramatically from work group to work group, and we want that to happen and to be an option. So what we've done here is laid out in a draft timeline that has certain checkpoints where we want to sort of accomplish these tasks by this point. If it happens sooner than that, that's great. If it takes longer than that, that's okay too. Just wanting to give some sort of a structure and to put some of that timeline in place so that there is support for you all as we get into the work group conversation. So to try and launch these work groups by May of 2023, to think about developing work plans, to recruit for the work groups and plan community engagement by June of 2023, to identify the challenges for each of these priorities, and to do outreach and community engagement around those challenges in September of 2023. And then to finalize those challenges by January of 2024, to identify solutions. So again, to do that outreach and community engagement by April of 2024, to draft recommendations, advocacy next steps by July of 2024, and then to finalize those recommendations and advocacy next steps by January of 2025. So again, January 2025, when we were making this timeline, felt really far off for our team. And I think we internally even had some uncertainty around whether that just was too far down the line. But looking at some of these recommendations, we know they're complex. We know it's going to take time. We know that there's a lot of engagement and community outreach that's needed. So wanting to be realistic as well and give everyone sort of enough runway to actually realistically accomplish these goals and to have comprehensive recommendations at least by the end of our sort of 2-year time period for the early childhood agenda. So these are the work groups that we're looking at here. So we'd be looking at number 2, a workforce compensation work group, which would really be thinking about everyone who is an early childhood professional in Massachusetts. How do we ensure that they have a competitive salary and benefits program? Number 4 is going beyond sort of the campaign that Kate mentioned earlier. So to really think holistically about developmental monitoring, screening, evaluation, and services in Massachusetts. And there's a number of advocates that are already doing amazing work in that space that have sort of stepped forward and are interested in pushing that work forward through that work group there. Number 5 is that quality improvement infrastructure recommendation. Number 6 is local infrastructure and partnerships. Number 8, public education campaign. Number 9, strengthening the links between health and early childhood. And then number 10, ending childhood hunger. So again, sort of the other half of the coin to the School Meals for All campaign, thinking about how we can comprehensively address hunger in early childhood space. And that means that there's going to be a variety of engagement options for you all. So what we've done here is we've kind of outlined 6 different options, ranging in sort of the level of participation or how intensive it'll be. So option 1 is really opportunities for you all just to engage with the existing coalitions that we just heard updates from. So to think about how you can get involved by joining their coalitions, to raise awareness, to make connections in the early childhood space, to keep that focus on early childhood. Sometimes you're bringing that voice to the meetings, to add your perspective to discussions, meetings, and events, advocate for the priority, and inform the implementation process if applicable. Also to join the work groups. So to think about how you can help raise awareness and make connections in the early childhood space again, to add your perspective to these work group discussions as they are developing these recommendations and thinking about what the next steps are for that work group in Massachusetts, and to eventually advocate for those work groups as well. Option 3 would be about leading each of these, leading a coalition. So we have those lead advocates identified. You heard from many of them today, where they are really sort of the backbone organizations for existing coalitions. They've developed recommendations, have advocacy agendas. They have the capacity to sort of advance these priorities and inform implementation. And we're going to ask that those lead advocates sort of can join the stewardship team so that we stay in contact and that we have that we know each other's work and we are connected and are able to sort of have that cross-sector collaboration piece that we know is so important in the early childhood agenda work. Option 4 is about leading the work groups. So where we identified opportunity to lead on the agenda itself, this is where we were really looking for organizations that have content expertise and are willing to lead each of these various work groups. We're also going to ask them to potentially partner with a facilitator or co-leads if that's applicable. So they'll develop work plans, they'll guide the consensus building process for each of the work groups, develop recommendations, identify advocacy next steps needed to advance each of these priorities. And the stewardship team is also another sort of flag there that we're hoping to see participation on. We've sort of bucketed the content expertise and facilitation into 2 different things here because we know that those are 2 very different roles and we want to be as supportive as possible. So we're also going to be looking for facilitators who can serve as sort of the go-between our team and the work groups that can help to develop these recommendations, manage meeting logistics, preserve some of the structural components of the early childhood agenda, but that maybe don't have the content expertise needed to develop the actual recommendations. So the final option really is about pairing those 2 things together and thinking about, you know, if your organization has capacity, has the content expertise, has the capacity to be a facilitator, and is willing to do both of those to sort of combine roles 4 and 5 and to view that as sort of just one organization that's doing both of those things. And again, the stewardship team is another flag there. I'm going to turn it over to Neri quickly, who's going to share a bit about communications and how we're thinking about that moving forward.
Hi all. So as you may have noticed, we are, what is the expression? Flying the plane as we're building it. And so that directly, affects communications. Some of the things that we are working on right now is putting together some facilitation guides and a communications toolkit for folks who are going to be more actively involved in the agenda work, and also for anybody who wants to amplify the work of the agenda. Whether you're a parent or a provider or a legislator, we want to be able to provide some guidance for how to talk about the agenda, what it is, and how people can get involved. And then more practical things that we're also doing is that we are working on some social media campaigns. You're already receiving our emails through our email marketing tool, Salsa. And we are working on enhancing the current website. So if you go to earlychildhoodagenda.org, that is the initial platform where we're posting everything. We're posting events, we're posting an archive of the events with links to the YouTube playlist. We're posting any media or news that is being put together for the agenda, and anything else that's already available is on the earlychildhoodagenda.org website. But moving forward, we are creating a new website. We're hoping to create a new website that is more enhanced, that has more options for folks to download tools and just, be more of a well-rounded source of resource for folks around all of this agenda work. So if anyone is interested in joining the communications group that will be tackling all of this, please shoot me an email, and I'll put my email address in the chat as well as the current website. Thank you.
All right, and the final component here is advocacy. So what we want to do is really push forward this opt-in advocacy. So when you become a partner, you're not taking a policy stance on all 10 priorities. You're just participating in this process. So that's what we want to continue through these work groups. And now that we have 10 priorities identified. So as an example, looking at that list of 10, you as your organization may say, like, I support number 2 and I support number 8, but it's not really our focus. Any of these others aren't really our focus. And that's totally okay. That is something that we encourage. We want you to choose what campaigns to participate in and to support advocacy that aligns with your priorities or with what you're allowed to advocate for. This also allows us to be a true public-private partnership. So again, sort of, as I mentioned there, that we know that there are many state partners that have been involved in this, that are on this call, that can't have that sort of advocacy branch of their work as well. So that is sort of the general stance that we're hoping to push forward, but looking for everyone's feedback on that as well. The final thing we have today is just an opportunity to provide some feedback. So I'm going to go ahead and put the link in the chat. We have a group map here, and we're going to just spend the next few minutes getting started on this, and then we will be posting this in our follow-up email, sharing it with you all in the broader group, just so we can get some feedback from a larger audience as well. But wanting to get some feedback on sort of what we've shared there around the structure, around the engagement opportunities, communications, and advocacy. See if there are any questions and comments. What's this bringing up for you? What are you wondering? And it'll help inform our sort of next steps as we continue to develop this next phase of the agenda.
And Marissa, as you're doing that, I just want to highlight Ginny Hamilton in the chat and the work that she's doing with Essentials for Early Childhood. Put a link for support around DEI work that they have graciously offered to the 9:30 callers and participants of the agenda. So there's a very robust update in chat about how you can participate. And thanks again for that, Ginny.
All right, so I have put the link in the chat there, and I'm going to go ahead and pull up the group map now. But again, we're just going to get a few little bits of feedback now, and then we can share this in the email later. But wanted to give you all a chance to come live and share any questions or share any comments as we're going through this. So I'm seeing in communications, I'll go ahead and share my screen so you all can see this too. Communications email is great, maybe 2 per month. So not sort of consistent, not weekly communications, but thinking about some sort of consistent timeline there. See if there were any sort of questions or comments around the structure, engagement, or advocacy, or any sort of general questions as well.
And I would just be, we're inspired by the level of participation online throughout the agenda process, and really have come to value these tools. I think we were worried at first just of how much would happen, but so much of what the final product of the agenda was because of these group maps. So I'm glad we're kicking it off now, but please continue to share, and it is anonymous, even though you have to put your name in.
All right, so question about the time commitment, question about the structure in general. So how is what the coalitions that we heard from today, what they've been doing different than what is meant to happen in the context of the agenda? Do they need to fit their work into the agenda process, or does the agenda need to fit into their process or something else? That's a great question. That's one that we've sort of been grasping with as well, is how do we sort of make this matchmaking between existing coalitions that have had processes that they've developed, that have developed recommendations, that have advocacy agendas. How do we sort of combine with that work while also sort of moving forward these work groups, which is sort of a new arm or where there's new discussion there. So I think that's something that we're still thinking about as well. So if there are any suggestions there or any comments on that, we'd be happy to hear about that as well. For engagement, I'm seeing our options 1 to 3 for agenda items that already have a lead, and options 4 to 5 for those that are listed as opportunity to lead. Yes, kind of. So option 1 and option 3 are for items that already have a lead. Option 2 and then 4 through 6 are the opportunity to lead. So yeah, we're really thinking about, again, these 2 branches where there's existing coalitions where we've identified those leads where we know that the coalitions are doing work in that space, and we want to help connect you all to those systems to sign up for their emails, to help to advocate for those priorities, to be involved in their meetings, while also knowing that there's this branch of work where we want to launch these new work groups, that there are 7 priorities that we have to sort of dig a little deeper on and develop recommendations for. And that we know that that is going to take time and energy from all of us. So wanting to help support that in any way we can and to set up an infrastructure around that through the early childhood agenda.
One of the commitments that we also have really been thinking about internally is how do we use all that information that came from the agenda process, right? As Marissa has talked about, like we had hundreds of ideas. We had each group like settle on 5 to 7. And then we worked down with the survey to whittle it down to these 10 priorities for right now. So I think if people have thoughts about that too, was there something that you said or you heard during the agenda process that you really want to make sure kind of, it is on the radar? Just know that it is all on the radar. And I think that's like having a new website that has functionality that we can really think about how we're going to track and measure progress and be it opportunistic when there are opportunities, because that's the other piece. You never know what's going to move or what might get some attention. So we're constantly thinking about how we're going to honor that work of the agenda. And also, if you are interested in speaking on being on panels, we get so many invitations and want to share those opportunities with folks who are interested in participating in those activities. So you can either shoot Marissa or I an email or put it on the group map, like I am interested in speaking out about X. And then as we hit opportunities, we want to match make and provide opportunity for people who are interested in practicing.
Thanks, Amy.
Can I jump in, Marissa?
Yeah, go ahead, Titus.
I wanted to help you answer some of these questions, if that's okay.
Yeah,
just one, actually. The question about the stipends that I saw in other. Thank you for that question. We are currently thinking of a way to provide stipends for the facilitators, for some of the facilitators based on the options that Marissa laid out. So there's all different kinds of options for how the working groups will get staffed and supported. And we are currently building a budget for stipends for those people who we would want to take on more work by helping us. So it's not just the strategies team, but it's some of you perhaps helping us facilitate the working group meetings going forward. So yes, we are thinking of stipends for that.
And I see some excellent questions here too about sort of how we are going to continue some of these values of the early childhood agenda. So thinking about how those with lived experience take on more of a leadership role. Those who identify as ones and twos that are in those positions. And yes, that's something that we've definitely thought about too. Whether it's in the role of facilitator, we know that we want to have that sort of role represented in multiple ways on the stewardship team. So that's one we've been considering that as well. And then finally, co-leads for the group work is another one that we've thought about too. So I think that that's definitely on our radar for sure. And then through the facilitation, wanting to make sure that we're preserving this, the Elevating Voices continuum, and that we're utilizing the 1, 2, and 3 structure in meetings moving forward, even though we won't necessarily be facilitating those meetings. So that's one component that we did want to keep and preserve in the work groups. So what would the work groups you described be doing differently than what the work groups did in the fall? That is a great question. So I'm going to go ahead and stop my screen share now. This is super helpful. Keep it coming. We're going to share this over email. just to get some perspective from the wider group as well. But this has given us a lot to sort of go through as a starting place. And I know that it probably feels like there's a lot of questions, more than there are answers right now, but again, we really did want to have you all inform this next step as well. So there will be more opportunities to talk about this and to make sure that we're all on the same page as we move forward. But I just saw an excellent question about how is the work that we're going to do with these work groups different than what we did in the fall. And I think the best example I will give is just to dive into one of the recommendations. So utilizing, let's do recommendation number 2. So exploring options and organizing around a specific course of action to ensure early childhood professionals across multiple sectors have access to competitive wages and an affordable benefits package. So thinking about healthcare, paid leave, retirement, childcare, and then the mechanism for paying that, how we're doing that as a state. So I think the best way I can describe that is that in the fall, our priority was to elevate that, to realize that we want to really dig into early childhood compensation as a priority for the agenda. The next phase is going to be to figure out what we're going to do around early childhood compensation. So to figure out the pathway, to explore those options, and to develop the ultimate recommendations that we're going to say, this is what we want, this is how we want it, these are the details. So we're going to go a level deeper and get to the ultimate answers that we can share with our state partners, with the broader early childhood community, and with our administration as well. All right, so I see it's 11:30. We just have a quick slide just to wrap it up here, but thank you all for sort of kickstarting the group map there. We're gonna share another one over email that really talks about the various partners that we want to be involved in this, and rely on you all for some of those connections. So to really think about who should be on that initial invite list for the work groups. It's going to be open to anyone, again, sort of maintaining that early childhood agenda process from the beginning, wanting it to be an open and transparent conversation. We hope to post that information on Basecamp as well. So that's all to come, but to wrap it up, I'm going to turn it over to Amy, who can just share our final slide here about next steps.
Thanks so much, Marissa, and thanks to each of you for coming and hanging in. We had 90 people RSVP for this morning. We know folks have had to jump. Tonight, we are providing translation in Spanish at 6 p.m. So please, if you know folks are interested in that, please share the agenda, help us connect to partners. It's not that in January it's over. This is just the beginning. We've had folks kind of say, I hadn't heard about this. I really want to be involved in this. And that is music to our ears. New website. If you need any advice or counsel about how to start a new website, we have some lessons learned. We talked about doing a refresher of EC 101 on the 9:30 call, and also in our communications, just to make sure that we are all aware of this incredible resource and using it as we need to build these connections. And then keep connected to us. Let us know if you're interested. Let us know if you know a great facilitator or somebody that would be interesting in this. And please connect us with existing coalitions or work groups. This is not about competition. This is about non-duplication and best support as a bridge builder and opportunity for folks to be involved. And so we will see folks at 6 p.m. If not, please join the 9:30 call list. We really appreciate the feedback about communications, as that's something that, like many organizations, we are working to kind of continuous feedback and loop of improvement. So thanks to the SFC team. It was so great to hear so many voices today. And please continue to advocate and support young children and families in the Commonwealth. We will see you soon. Have a great day.